She grew up alone, believing that no one in the world cared about her existence, but fate stepped in when she crossed paths with a man who had the same rare mark her mother had. Her whole body trembled as she realized she might have found her. Father, if this beautiful story of overcoming and love interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you're watching. Continuing. The December sun beat down on the streets of New York City with an intensity that made the asphalt smolder. Emily walked barefoot along Fifth Avenue, her 10 years carrying the weight of a lifetime of survival. Her small, injured feet found every loose stone, every hole in the ground, but she no longer felt them. Hunger was a constant companion, more faithful than any person she had ever known. Her faded clothes hung loosely on her thin body, and her light brown hair, tangled by time and lack of care, partially hid a face that retained delicate features despite the dirt. She stopped in front of a trash can near Joe's small market, hoping he wasn't looking, so she could search for remnants that could serve as food. For as long as she could remember, these streets were her universe. She had no memories of a home, of her own room, of a table set for dinner. Her most precious possession fit in the palm of her dirty hand, an old photograph folded at the corners with colors faded by time and the dampness of nights in the open air. Emily took the photo out of the torn pocket of her blouse and contemplated it for the 1,000th time. There was her mother, Sarah, with that sweet smile that she tried to remember but that became more distant each day. What caught her attention most in the image wasn't the woman's beautiful face, but the large, peculiar red mark on the back of her right hand, a mark that her mother always said was special, a family sign that few in the world possessed. Sarah had left when Emily was only 3 years old. The memories were fragmented, warm arms that cradled her, a soft voice singing lullabies, the smell of cheap but clean soap. Then came the fire in the housing project apartment, and everything changed. No one appeared to fetch her. No relative emerged from the ashes of that tragedy. The girl ended up on the streets, where she learned that survival was a cruel art that few mastered. On that scorching afternoon, Emily put the photo away and continued her walk in search of something to eat. She passed by Anthony's bakery, where the smell of fresh bread tortured her, and headed toward downtown, where sometimes she managed to get a few coins from the pity of passers-by. Madison Avenue was as busy as always. Men and women in suits ran from one side to the other, talking on the phone, carrying folders, living lives that seemed to happen on another planet. Emily positioned herself near the subway entrance, extending her small, dirty hand, whispering pleas for help that were ignored by the hurried crowd. That's when she saw him. Among hundreds of people passing without looking at her, one man caught her attention in a way she couldn't explain. He was tall, elegant, wearing a navy blue suit that seemed to have cost more money than she would see in her entire life. His light brown hair was perfectly combed, and he walked with the confidence of someone who commanded his own destiny. Something about him made Emily's heart race. Maybe it was his fair skin like hers. Maybe it was the fine features of his face which vaguely resembled her mother's in the photograph. She couldn't stop looking at him, as if an invisible force was pulling her in his direction. The man was talking on the phone, gesturing with one hand while holding an expensive leather folder with the other. Emily followed him with her eyes, hypnotized until he stopped at the traffic light right next to her. That's when it happened. He raised his right arm to adjust his shirt cuff, and the sleeve rose just a few inches. But it was enough. There on the back of his right hand was the same large, irregular red mark that her mother had in the photograph. The world stopped. Emily felt as if all the air had been sucked from her lungs. Her legs trembled, and she needed to lean against the wall to avoid falling. Tears sprang from her eyes without her being able to control them, mixing with the dirt on her face. Never in all her life had she seen anyone with that mark besides her mother. The light changed, and the man continued walking, but Emily couldn't move. She stood there, trembling, with the photo pressed against her chest. Her mind couldn't process what she had just seen. Could it be possible? After so many years alone, could it be possible that someone from her family was alive? The hope that arose in her chest was so intense, it hurt. For a moment, she imagined what it would be. Like to have someone who knew her real name, who could tell stories about her mother. She imagined what it would be like to have a place to sleep, food on the table, clean clothes. But then reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. She was just a street girl, dirty and hungry. He was clearly a rich and important man. Why would someone like that care about her? How could she approach him without being expelled by the security guards who certainly protected him? Emily wiped away her tears with her dirty hands and made a decision. That would change her life forever. The fear didn't matter. The shame didn't matter. She couldn't let that man disappear. If he really was from her family, it was her only chance to discover who she was, where she came from, why she was alone in the world. She began to follow him through the busy streets of downtown New York. Her bare feet encountered obstacles with every step, but she didn't give up. The man walked quickly, and she had to run to keep him in sight among the crowd. He entered an imposing commercial building on Wall Street. Emily stayed outside, watching through the glass door. She could see men in suits coming in and going out, all looking important and busy. She tried to enter, but a security guard immediately barred her. "Hey kid, this isn't a place for you," said the man, looking at her with contempt. "Please, I need to talk to a man who went in here. He has a mark on his hand, just like my mother's." Emily begged, showing the wrinkled photograph. The security guard didn't even look at the photo. "Get out of here before I call the police," he threatened. Emily backed away, but she didn't give up. She stayed outside the building, sitting on the sidewalk waiting. The sun gave way to the first shadows of the afternoon, and she continued there, hungry, thirsty, but determined not to leave that place until she saw him again. At 6 o'clock, in the evening when the movement in the building began to decrease, she saw him coming out. Her heart raced again. It was her chance, perhaps the only one she would have. She got up from the sidewalk, wiped her hands on her dirty blouse and approached him with trembling steps. "Sir?" she called with a weak, hoarse voice. He didn't hear, continued walking while talking on the phone. "Sir, please," she tried again, a little louder. This time he stopped and looked around, searching for where the voice was coming from. When his eyes found Emily, she saw an expression of surprise followed by compassion. "What do you want, little girl?" he asked, putting the phone in his pocket. Emily extended the photograph with trembling hands. "Your hand, sir. You have the same mark as my mother." The man frowned and looked at his own right hand, then at the photo Emily was holding. When he saw the image, his face paled. It was as if he had seen a ghost. "Where did you get this photo?" he asked, with an altered voice. "It's of my mother. Her name was Sarah. It's all I have of her." The name hit the man like lightning. Sarah, his younger sister, who had left home at 18 to marry a man her father didn't approve of. Since then, they had never spoken again. He never knew what happened to her after she was expelled from home by the inflexible patriarch. Michael Thompson, a successful 42-year-old businessman, felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He looked at that thin, dirty girl, saw the fine features that resembled Sarah so much, the fair skin, the light brown hair, and especially, he saw in her eyes the same sweet expression his sister had when they were children. "What's your name?" he asked, bending down to be at her height. "Emily," she replied, unable to stop crying. "And where is your mother, Emily?" She's not here anymore. It was many years ago, in a fire." Michael felt a deep pain in his chest. Sarah was dead. And he never knew. Even worse, his niece had grown up alone on the streets, not knowing she had family. His father's pride and stubbornness had separated them forever, but perhaps there was still time to correct at least part of the mistake. "Emily," he said with a choked voice, "I'm Michael. And I'm sure I'm your uncle." The tears that ran down the girl's dirty face at that moment were different from all those she had ever shed. For the first time in her life, she wasn't crying from pain, hunger, or despair. She was crying from relief, from gratitude, from a happiness she didn't know existed. Michael extended his hand to her, and Emily held it without hesitation. At that moment, Under the orange sky of New York, two destinies reconnected through a mark that had united generations of the Thompson family. The girl who had grown up invisible to the world had finally been seen. Finally, she had a name, a story, a family. Michael's apartment in the Upper East Side was a universe that Emily had never imagined could exist. As the elevator silently rose to the 15th floor, she squeezed her uncle's hand tightly, still not believing that all of this was real. The mirrored walls of the elevator reflected her dirty, ragged image next to Michael's elegant figure, creating a contrast that made her feel even smaller. "Emily," Michael said with a soft voice, "you don't need to be afraid. From now on, everything will be different." When the doors opened, Emily was greeted by a private hall with marble flooring and a single dark wooden door. Michael opened the electronic lock and invited her in. What she saw left her speechless. The apartment was immense, with high ceilings and huge windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The furniture was all leather and fine wood. There were paintings on the walls that seemed expensive, and everything was impeccably clean and organized. Emily stood at the entrance, afraid to step on the shining floor with her dirty feet. "Come in, please," said Michael, noticing her hesitation. "This is your home now, too." Her home. Emily tested the words in her mind, but they seemed strange, impossible. How could someone who had spent her entire life sleeping in alleys have a home like that? Michael led her to the living room sofa and asked her to sit down. Then he disappeared for a few minutes and returned with a clean towel, a bathrobe, and a glass of milk. "Drink slowly," he instructed, handing her the glass. "When was the last time you ate?" Emily tried to remember, but the days blended into one another when you lived on the streets. "Yesterday morning, I think. I found half a loaf of bread in the bakery trash can." Michael's heart tightened. His niece had gone more than a day without eating, while he dined in expensive restaurants and wasted food without thinking twice. "I'll prepare something for you to eat, but first you need to take a bath. You must be tired, and—" "I don't know how to take a proper bath," Emily interrupted, lowering her eyes in shame. "Only with rainwater or from the park fountain." Michael felt a lump in his throat. His sister Sarah had been expelled from home while pregnant, and her daughter had grown up without the most basic things any child should have. He decided he would be patient and help her with everything. 2 hours later, Emily emerged from the bathroom as a completely different person. The hot bath had revealed clear, healthy skin beneath the dirt, and her light brown hair, now clean and combed, framed a delicate face that resembled Sarah even more. She wore a bathrobe that was too big for her thin body, but for the first time in her life she felt clean. Michael had ordered food from a Japanese restaurant, but when he saw Emily's confused expression at the unfamiliar dishes, he quickly improvised a ham and cheese sandwich, accompanied by orange juice. She ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were the best meal in the world. "Emily," said Michael after she finished eating, "I need you to tell me everything you remember about your mother, about how you ended up on the streets." The girl took a deep breath and began to tell her story. She spoke about the few memories she had of Sarah, about the fire in the housing project, about the years alone on the streets of New York. Michael listened in silence, feeling a growing guilt with each word. "Do you remember your father's name?" he asked. "My mother talked little about him. She just said he loved her very much, but that his family didn't like her. His name was John. John Smith, I think." Michael closed his eyes. John Smith was the humble man Sarah had chosen against her father's will. An honest worker, but one who had neither money nor social status. Because of old Thompson's pride and prejudices, the family had been torn apart. "And you, Uncle Michael," said Emily timidly, "can you tell me about my mother when she was young? What was she like?" Michael's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother was the sweetest person I've ever known. She was 5 years younger than me, and I always protected her when we were children. Sarah had a huge heart, always took care of injured animals she found on the street, always shared her school lunch with those who didn't have any. She deserved to have had a better life, Emily, much better." "Why did she leave home?" Michael sighed deeply. Our father was a very rigid man, very proud. When Sarah fell in love with your father, he didn't accept it because John wasn't rich. There were many arguments, many shouting matches. One night Dad said she had to choose, either stay with the family and forget John or leave home forever. Sarah chose love. And you? Why didn't you look for her afterward? The question hit Michael like a knife. I was young, immature. I thought she would come back when she realized her mistake. I was too proud to give in. When I wanted to look for her, I couldn't find her. New York is very big, and she had completely disappeared. Emily absorbed this information in silence. She finally understood why she had grown up without a family, why her mother always seemed sad when talking about the past. Uncle Michael, she said in a low voice, do you think I can stay here? I don't know how to do anything right. I don't know how to read. I don't know how to behave in beautiful places like this. Michael knelt before her and held her small hands. Emily, you're my niece, your family. Not only can you stay here, but this is your home now. And about not knowing how to do things, don't worry. We'll learn together. You'll study, have nice clothes, toys, everything a girl your age should have. That night, Michael prepared the guest room for Emily. He changed the sheets, put clean towels in the adjoining bathroom, and even found a teddy bear he had received as a promotional gift and never used. When Emily lay down on the soft bed with fragrant sheets and fluffy pillows, she couldn't sleep immediately. She was used to the hard ground, the street noise, the constant fear. That silence and comfort were too strange. Around 2 in the morning, Michael heard a noise coming from her room. When he went to check, he found Emily sleeping on the floor next to the bed, hugging the teddy bear. She had made a sort of nest with the pillows and a blanket. His heart broke when he realized she still didn't feel safe enough to sleep in the bed. Carefully, he picked her up and placed her back on the bed, covering her tenderly. Emily murmured something in her sleep, and he could clearly hear, "Mommy, don't leave me alone." Michael stood there for long minutes, observing that child who had found her way to him through a birthmark and a creased photograph. He promised himself that she would never feel alone again. The next morning, Michael woke up early and prepared breakfast. When Emily appeared in the kitchen, still wearing the oversized bathrobe, he noticed that she looked at everything with curiosity, but maintained a respectful distance, as if she still didn't believe she could touch things. "Good morning, Emily. Did you sleep well?" She nodded, although she had woken up several times during the night, frightened by nightmares about returning to the streets. "Listen," said Michael, serving banana smoothie and buttered bread. "Today, we're going to resolve some important things. First, we'll go to the store to buy clothes for you. Then we'll go to the registry office to see about your documents, and maybe to the doctor for a general checkup. What do you think?" Emily agreed, but Michael noticed the fear in her eyes. "Are you worried about something? What if people ask why I'm with you? What if they think it's strange? What if—" Her voice faltered. "What if they discover you shouldn't be here?" Michael completed, understanding her fears. "Emily, you're my niece. You have every right to be here. You don't need to be afraid of anyone." Later at the mall, Emily experienced things she had never imagined possible. Michael took her to a children's clothing store where she could choose dresses, pants, blouses, shoes, and even new underwear. The saleswoman, initially suspicious of the unusual situation, was won over by Michael's politeness and Emily's shy sweetness. When Emily came out of the fitting room wearing a blue dress with small flowers and white shoes, Michael felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. She looked like a normal, happy, cared-for girl. She looked like Sarah when she was a child. "Do I look pretty, Uncle Michael?" she asked, turning slowly. "You look beautiful, Emily. Your mother would be very proud." On the way back home, Emily held Michael's hand tightly, observing the movement of the city with different eyes. She was no longer an invisible girl that nobody wanted to see. She was Emily Thompson, niece of a respected businessman, a girl who had a home, food, and family. But not everything would be as simple as that first day suggested. Michael still didn't know how to explain the situation to his work colleagues, to the building employees, to the society he frequented. And Emily, despite all the gratitude and happiness, still carried within herself the deep marks of a childhood on the streets, fears and traumas that wouldn't disappear overnight. That afternoon, while Emily organized her new clothes in the wardrobe that was now hers alone, Michael sat in the living room thinking about the challenges ahead. She would need to be enrolled in school, her history explained to the teachers, help to adapt to a completely different world. But mainly she would need to be taught that she deserved all that love and care, that it wasn't charity, but a family right. When night fell, they sat on the sofa to watch television together. Emily rested her head on Michael's shoulder, and for the first time in her life, she felt what it was like to have security, to have someone who cared about her. "Uncle Michael," she whispered, "thank you for not sending me away." "I'll never send you away, Emily. Never. Your family and family takes care of each other." As she fell asleep there on the sofa, Michael looked out the window at the city lights and thought of Sarah. Wherever she was, he hoped she knew that her daughter was safe, loved, and finally home. 3 weeks had passed since Emily had come into Michael's life, and although the days brought small victories, they also revealed challenges that neither had anticipated. The routine was being established. Michael woke up early, had breakfast with Emily, left her with Carmen, the housekeeper he had hired especially to take care of her during the day, and departed for work. Carmen was a 50-year-old woman, experienced with children, but even she was having difficulties dealing with the habits Emily had developed during years on the streets. The girl still stored food under her bed, woke up frightened in the middle of the night screaming, and had panic attacks when Michael was late coming back from work. That January morning, Michael was in his office at Thompson & Associates when his secretary, Patricia, entered with a concerned expression. "Mr. Thompson, there's a person here who says she's from social services. She wants to talk to you about a child." Michael's heart raced. Since he had brought Emily home, he had lived with the constant fear that someone would question the situation. He knew he had done everything correctly, but institutions didn't always see things the same way. "Send her in," he said, trying to stay calm. The woman who entered his office was young, around 30, with a serious appearance and a folder full of documents. She introduced herself as Dr. Fern Sanders, a social worker responsible for cases of street children in the central region. "Mr. Thompson, we received an anonymous complaint that you are keeping a minor in your residence without proper legal documentation. I need to verify the child's situation." Michael took a deep breath. "Dr. Sanders, the child in question is my niece, Emily. She was living on the streets after losing her mother, who was my sister. As soon as I found her, I took her into my home. Can you prove this relationship, and why was the child on the streets if she had family?" Michael explained the whole story. The family break, Sarah's expulsion, the years without contact. He showed old photos where he and Sarah appeared together, family documents, and especially talked about the birthmark that identified them as relatives. "Mr. Thompson, even if it's true, there are legal procedures that must be followed. The child needs to undergo medical and psychological evaluation, and you need to apply for temporary guardianship. But she's well cared for, has everything she needs." "I'm not questioning your care, sir, but the law exists to protect children. I need to talk to her today." Michael had no choice but to agree. He called Carmen and asked her to prepare Emily to receive an important visit. When they arrived at the apartment, Emily was in the living room making a drawing. In the past few weeks, she had discovered the pleasure of drawing and painted constantly. Upon seeing a stranger entering with her uncle, she immediately curled up on the sofa, fear stamped on her face. "Emily," said Michael with a soft voice, "this is Dr. Sanders. She works helping children and wants to talk a little with you." Dr. Sanders approached slowly and sat in a nearby armchair. "Hi, Emily, what a beautiful drawing is that?" The girl quickly looked at Michael, as if asking permission to speak. It's my mother," she whispered. On the paper was a drawing of a woman with long hair smiling with a red mark clearly visible on her hand. "Do you like living here with your uncle?" asked the social worker. Emily nodded vigorously. "He takes care of me, gives me food, clean clothes, lets me take a hot bath every day." "And before? Where did you live?" Emily's face closed. "On the street. But I don't want to go back to the street. Please don't send me back to the street." The girl's desperate plea touched Dr. Sanders's heart. It was evident that she was well cared for, had gained weight, her clothes were clean, and there was a light in her eyes that didn't exist before. "Nobody's going to send you back to the street, Emily. We just want to make sure you're safe and happy." After a conversation of almost an hour, Dr. Sanders met with Michael in the kitchen. "Mr. Thompson, it's evident that the child is being well cared for and that there is a real bond between you. But I still need you to provide the legal documentation. I'll give you a deadline of 15 days to regularize the situation. Otherwise, I'll be obliged to temporarily remove the child." Michael felt the world collapse. "You can't do that. She's just adapting, starting to trust." "Sir, I understand, but those are the rules. Seek a lawyer specialized in family law immediately." After the social worker left, Michael found Emily, crying in her room, hugging the teddy bear. "She's going to take me away, isn't she?" sobbed the girl. Michael sat on the bed and pulled her into a hug. "I won't let anyone take you away, Emily. We'll solve this, I promise." That same afternoon, Michael sought out Dr. Henry Almond, a lawyer specializing in family law who had studied with him in college. "Michael, the situation is delicate, but not impossible," explained Henry after hearing the whole story. "You need to apply for temporary guardianship immediately. We'll argue that the child was in a situation of abandonment and that you, as her uncle and only close relative, have the legal right to care for her." "How long does that take?" "In urgent cases like this, we can get a decision in a week. But you need to be prepared for some investigations. Social workers, psychologists, maybe even representatives from the district attorney's office will come." Michael agreed to everything. He would do anything to keep Emily safe. Meanwhile, at the company, the news about the niece who had appeared out of nowhere was generating comments. Some colleagues supported Michael, admiring his attitude, but others whispered conspiracy theories about his true intentions. Claire Montgomery, a minority partner in the company, and Michael's former suitor, was one of the most skeptical. During a board meeting, she raised questions that deeply bothered Michael. "Michael, we all know you're a person of integrity, but don't you think this whole situation is very convenient? A child appears out of nowhere saying she's your niece, and you simply take her home. Claire, she has proof. The photograph, the birthmark, the physical similarities. That can all be forged. Street children are very clever. They know how to manipulate situations to get what they want." Michael stood up from the table, visibly irritated. "Are you suggesting that a 10-year-old child forged an old photograph and a birthmark to deceive me? I'm saying you need to be careful. Your reputation, the company, everything is at stake." The comment hit Michael like a punch. He realized that some people around him didn't see Emily as a needy child who had found her family, but as a threat, an opportunist. That night, Michael arrived home more tired than usual. Emily was in the living room watching cartoons with Carmen, but as soon as she saw him, she ran to hug him. "Uncle Michael, are you sad?" she asked, noticing his closed expression. "Just a tough day at work, little one." "Is it because of me? Are people saying bad things about you because of me?" Emily's perspicacity surprised him. Even as a child, she had developed a keen ability to read people and situations, a result of years surviving on the streets. "Emily, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. You are not a problem. You are a gift that life gave me. If some people can't understand that, the problem is theirs, not ours." But the doubts planted by Claire began to grow in Michael's mind. What if he was being too naive? What if Emily really was just a clever child who had created a convincing story? The birthmark could be a temporary tattoo. The photo could have been stolen from someone. These thoughts tormented him, especially when he saw how quickly Emily had adapted to the life of luxury. She learned too quickly how to use electronics, how to behave in sophisticated environments, how to get what she wanted with her sweet and affectionate manner. One night, unable to sleep, Michael decided to do something that left him ashamed. Afterward, he went to Emily's room and searched through her belongings, looking for anything that could prove or disprove her story. He found only the wrinkled photograph, already known, some drawings she had made, and a small, worn cloth doll she had brought from the street. Nothing to raise suspicions. When he was putting everything back, Emily woke up and saw him there. "Uncle Michael, what are you doing?" The simple and innocent question made him feel like the worst man in the world. How could he doubt that child who looked at him with so much love and trust? "Sorry, little one, I was looking for where you kept your colored pencils." Emily smiled sleepily. "They're on the table in the living room. Do you want to draw with me tomorrow?" "Of course," he said, kissing her forehead. "Now go back to sleep." But while Emily slept peacefully, Michael spent the night awake, fighting against the doubts that some people had planted in his mind. Was it possible that his need for family had blinded him to a possible manipulation? The next morning, during breakfast, Emily asked a question that affected Michael even more. "Uncle Michael, if they discovered I'm not really your niece, would you still let me stay?" His heart stopped. "Why are you asking that?" "Just wanted to know. Sometimes I'm afraid you'll discover I'm not good enough to be your family." Michael pulled her into a tight hug. "Emily, you're already my family, nothing else matters." But her words echoed in his mind all day. Was it an innocent question from an insecure child, or was there something more behind it? The deadline, given by the social worker, was rapidly running out, and Michael still hadn't gotten all the necessary documentation. The doubts about the truthfulness of Emily's story continued to grow, fueled by the malicious comments of some colleagues. That afternoon, while waiting for the lawyer to finalize the papers, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He would do a DNA test. If Emily was really his niece, the test would prove it. If not, at least he would know the truth. What he didn't imagine was that this decision would trigger a series of events that would put everything at risk, and that the truth about Emily would be much more complex than anyone could imagine. The clinical laboratory was in an upscale area of New York, discreet and efficient. Michael had scheduled the DNA test for a Thursday morning when Emily was distracted watching cartoons with Carmen. He said he needed to go out quickly to resolve legal issues, but in truth he was about to make the most difficult decision since finding her. Dr. Marcus Rivers, responsible for the laboratory, received Michael personally. He was an experienced man who had dealt with delicate cases involving paternity and kinship. "Mr. Thompson, are you sure you want to do this test?" "Sometimes it's better to leave some things as they are," advised the doctor, perceiving the anguish on Michael's face. "I need to know the truth, doctor. If she is indeed my niece, I need proof for the courts. If not—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "I understand. We'll need saliva samples from both of you. How do you intend to collect the child's sample without her knowing?" Michael had thought about this. "I'll bring her toothbrush. Can it be done with that?" "Yes, it can. But Mr. Thompson, I need you to be aware that this test can change everything." "Are you sure you're prepared for any result?" Michael nodded, although he wasn't sure of anything. That night, when Emily was sleeping, Michael took her toothbrush with trembling hands. He felt like a traitor, but the doubts planted by Claire and other colleagues wouldn't leave him in peace. If Emily was really his niece, the test would only confirm what he already knew. If not, at least he would be sure he was being deceived. 3 days later, the result arrived. Michael was in his office when Dr. Rivers called. "Mr. Thompson, we have the test result. Would you like to come here so we can talk in person?" The doctor's serious tone made Michael's heart race. "You can tell me over the phone, doctor. Is she my niece or not?" There was a long pause before the answer. "Mr. Thompson, the test shows there is no genetic relationship between you. The child is not your biological niece." The world collapsed. Under Michael's feet, he sat heavily in his chair, feeling as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "Are you sure, doctor? There can't be a mistake." "We did the test twice to be sure. The result is conclusive. I'm sorry." Michael hung up the phone and sat there for long minutes, trying to process the information. Emily had lied. The whole story of the birthmark, the photograph, everything had been an elaborate staging to gain his trust and access to his comfortable life. The pain he felt was deep and multifaceted. He felt betrayed, used, ashamed for having been so naive. But worst of all, he felt a profound sadness for having believed he had finally found a piece of Sarah, a way to correct the mistakes of the past. When he arrived home that night, Emily ran to hug him as she always did. But this time, Michael felt his body rigid, unable to return the affection. "Uncle Michael, are you okay?" "You look sad," she said, looking at him with those big innocent eyes that now he saw with different eyes. "I'm fine, just tired," he lied. During dinner, Michael observed Emily carefully. How had he not noticed before? She was too smart, had adapted too quickly to the life of luxury. And that birthmark, how had she managed to perfectly imitate the mark from the photograph? After Emily went to sleep, Michael examined the old photo again. Under a magnifying glass, he could see small signs that it had been digitally manipulated. The birthmark had been altered to look identical to the one Emily had on her hand. The discovery was the final blow. Emily had not only lied about being his niece, but had forged evidence to make her story convincing. She was, as Claire had suggested, an extremely intelligent street child who had devised a sophisticated plan to get a better life. Michael spent the night awake, alternating between anger and a deep sadness. Part of him admired the girl's intelligence and determination, but another part felt deeply betrayed. How could he trust her after that? The next morning, Michael made a difficult decision. He called Dr. Sanders, the social worker. "Dr. Sanders, I need to speak with you about Emily. I've discovered some things that have changed the situation." "What happened, Mr. Thompson?" "She's not my niece. I did a DNA test, and there's no relationship between us. She forged evidence to convince me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mr. Thompson, are you sure about this? That's a very serious accusation." "I have all the proof, the test, the analysis of the manipulated photograph. She completely deceived me." "I understand. I'll come by this afternoon to talk to the child. Depending on what we discover, it may be necessary to remove her from your home." After hanging up, Michael sat in the living room and looked around. In just 1 month, that apartment had been transformed. There were Emily's drawings on the refrigerator, toys scattered about, a small table and chair he had bought for her to do her lessons. All that environment that had become her true home now seemed like a lie. When Emily woke up and came down for breakfast, Michael observed her with different eyes. How had he been so blind? She moved around the house with a naturalness that should have been suspicious. A child who had lived her entire life on the streets wouldn't adapt so quickly to a domestic routine. "Good morning, Uncle Michael," she said cheerfully, but stopped when she saw his serious expression. "Did something happen?" Michael took a deep breath. He had decided he would confront her directly. "Emily, I need you to tell me the truth about who you are." The girl's face immediately paled. "What do you mean? I already told you." "The truth, Emily. I know you're not my niece. I did a test, analyzed the photograph. I know you forged everything." Tears began to run down Emily's face, but this time Michael didn't feel compassion. He was convinced that even the tears were part of the act. "I can explain," she began. "Then explain. Who are you really? What's your real name? Why did you do this to me?" Emily cried for a few minutes before she could speak. "My name is really Emily, but my last name isn't Thompson. It's Smith." "Smith? Like the John Smith you said was your father?" She nodded between sobs. "John Smith was my grandfather, not my father. And Sarah was actually my grandmother, not my mother." Michael frowned. "What are you talking about?" "My mother's name was Anna Smith. She was the daughter of Sarah and John. When I was little, she told me stories about Grandma Sarah, who had been expelled from a rich family because of prejudice. She showed me the photo of Grandma and said that one day we would find her family. And where is your mother now?" She left when I was 7, not in a fire, like I said. She was very sick with something in her lungs. In her last days, she only repeated that I needed to find Grandma Sarah's family, that they had a mark like mine on their hand." Michael sat down heavily. The story was becoming even more complicated. "So you knew from the beginning that I was Sarah's brother?" "No, I only knew that Sarah had a brother named Michael, who was rich and lived in New York. When I saw you on the street with the mark, I thought it was too much of a coincidence. But I was afraid you wouldn't believe me if I told you I was a great niece, not a niece. So that's why you changed the story. Emily nodded, still crying. I thought if you knew I was just a distant great-niece, you wouldn't care about me. I was afraid you would send me away, so I made up that I was Sarah's daughter, not granddaughter. Michael processed the information slowly. If Emily was the daughter of Anna, who was Sarah's daughter, then she was his great-niece, not his direct niece. The kinship existed, but it was more distant than she had claimed. And the photograph? How did you manage to manipulate it? I didn't manipulate anything. The photo is real. It's of my grandmother Sarah. I just showed it as if it were of my mother. But the person in the photo is really Sarah, your sister. Michael took the photograph and examined it again. He realized he had been mistaken in thinking it had been digitally altered. In fact, the photo was original, just very old and worn. Emily, do you have any proof that Anna was Sarah's daughter? Birth certificate, any document? I have my mother's birth certificate. She kept all the documents in a box. It's hidden in a place only. I know. Where? In the old house where we lived, before going to the streets. It's buried in the backyard. Michael felt a mixture of relief and confusion. If Emily was telling the truth now, then she really was family. She had just lied about the degree of kinship. Why didn't you tell me this from the beginning? Because I was afraid. You're important, Rich. Have a beautiful life. I'm just a street girl. I thought if you knew I was just a distant relative, you wouldn't care. At that moment, Michael understood the complexity of the situation. Emily had lied, yes, but not about being family. She had lied out of fear, out of insecurity, thinking that only by being a niece would she be accepted. The pain of betrayal was still there, but it was beginning to be replaced by a deeper understanding. Emily was just a frightened child who had done what she thought necessary to not lose the only chance of having a family. Emily, said Michael in a softer voice, do you understand? That lying was wrong, that it hurt me? She nodded vigorously. I know, and I'm sorry. I wanted to tell the truth, but I was too afraid you would send me away. Michael looked at that girl who had completely changed his life. She had lied, but out of love, out of fear of abandonment, and if she really was his great-niece, she was still family. Let's go get those documents, he decided. I need to see the proof with my own eyes. That afternoon, when Dr. Sanders arrived for the conversation Michael had scheduled, the situation had completely changed. Michael explained the new version of the story and asked for more time to verify the documentation. Mr. Thompson, even if she is your great-niece, the initial lie is concerning. A child who lies so naturally may have other behavioral problems. Dr. Sanders, she's just a frightened child who did what she thought necessary to survive. I'm not going to abandon her now. But the doubts continued. Was this new version of the story true or just another more elaborate lie? Michael would have to make a definitive decision about Emily's future, regardless of the results of the documents they were going to seek. The trip to Queens, on the outskirts of New York, was tense and silent. Michael drove his imported car through the potholed streets, while Emily guided him to the place where she had lived with her mother before going to the streets. The difference between the two worlds was striking, from the luxury buildings of the Upper East Side to the simple, small houses of the outskirts. It's there, Emily pointed to a small brick house with a broken window and weeds growing in the... Child, Aunt Connie should still have the key. She was my mother's friend. Michael parked the car and observed the neighborhood. Children played in the dirt street. Women hung clothes on clotheslines. Men talked on corners. It was a world he knew only from a distance, through television reports. Connie Sanders was a woman in her 40s, thin and tired, but with kind eyes. When she saw Emily getting out of the luxury car, her eyes filled with tears. Emily, my child, where have you been all this time? I looked for you after you disappeared. The girl ran into the woman's arms, and Michael felt a pang in his chest as he realized there were other people who cared about Emily, who had worried about her disappearance. Aunt Connie, this is Michael. He's family of my grandmother. Sarah. Connie looked at Michael with initial distrust, but when Emily quickly explained the situation, the woman seemed more relieved. Thank God you found someone from the family, child. Your mother Anna always said you had rich relatives, but she never managed to find them. Did you know Anna Smith? asked Michael. I knew her since she was little. We were neighbors right here. Anna was a sweet girl, hard-working, did house cleaning in several homes to support Emily. When she got sick, I tried to help, but I couldn't afford to take care of another child. And about Sarah, Anna's mother, do you know anything? Connie nodded. Anna used to tell that her mother had come from a rich family, but was expelled when she married John. Sarah died young, in a fire in the housing project where she lived. Anna was just a child at the time, was raised by an aunt who has also died. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit in Michael's mind. Emily's story made sense. It had just been told in a confused way by a frightened child. Aunt Connie, can I go into the house? I need to get some documents my mother kept, asked Emily. Connie took the key and opened the door of the small house. The smell of mold and abandonment was strong. Old furniture covered in dust, some clothes still scattered about, remnants of a life abruptly interrupted. Emily went straight to the backyard and began to dig near a guava tree with her own hands. Michael helped her, and soon they found a shoebox wrapped in plastic. Inside the box were documents yellowed by time. Anna Smith's birth certificate, Sarah Thompson's marriage certificate to John Smith, Emily's own birth certificate, and some old photos. Michael took Anna's birth certificate with trembling hands. There it was, clearly written, Anna Smith, daughter of Sarah Thompson Smith and John Smith. The birth date indicated that Anna had been born 2 years after Sarah had been expelled from home. My God, murmured Michael. It's true, Sarah really did have a daughter. In the old photos, Michael could see Sarah with a baby in her arms, certainly Anna. And in one of the photos, Sarah appeared with John, both young and smiling, despite the simple clothes and humble setting. Your sister was beautiful, commented Connie, looking over Michael's shoulder. Anna always said she got her beauty from her mother. Michael looked at Emily, who was watching him anxiously. So you really are my great niece. Are you angry with me for having lied about being your direct niece? She asked in a small voice. Michael knelt beside her. Emily, you're family. It doesn't matter if you're a niece, great-niece, or great-great-niece. You're blood of my blood. Tears of relief ran down Emily's dirty face. So, I can keep living with you? Yes, you can. In fact, now that we have all the documents, I can officially formalize your guardianship. Connie smiled at the scene. Anna would be very happy to know that her daughter found Sarah's family. She always dreamed of that. On the way back home, Michael made a stop at the notary's office to authenticate the documents. Then he called Dr. Henry, his lawyer. Henry, we have all the documents. Emily really is family, but she's my great-niece, not my direct niece. Does that change anything in the legal process? It makes it even easier. As a great-niece, and there being no other relatives interested in guardianship, the process should be approved quickly. That night, Michael and Emily sat together on the sofa to talk about everything that had happened. Emily, I need you to promise me something. Never lie to me again. No matter what it is, I prefer to know the truth, even if it's difficult. I promise, Uncle Michael. I only lied because I was afraid you wouldn't want me if you knew I was just a distant relative. Emily, family isn't about how close the kinship is. It's about love, care, being present, and you brought life to this house, brought joy that I hadn't felt in years. Even though I'm a street girl who doesn't know how to behave properly, Michael laughed, especially because of that. You taught me things I had forgotten, how to laugh at silly cartoons, how to have fun with simple things, how good it is to have someone waiting when we get home. Emily snuggled against Michael's chest. Uncle Michael, can I ask you something? Of course. Will you tell me about our family? About the grandparents? About what life was like before? Michael smiled. He could finally tell true stories about Sarah, about the parents, about the history of the Thompson family. Your great-grandparents, my parents, owned a small furniture factory. They weren't as rich as I became, but they had a comfortable life. Your great-grandfather, Anthony Thompson, was a very rigid man, very concerned with social appearances. Michael told about his childhood with Sarah, about how she was caring and dreamy, about how she took care of injured animals she found. He told about the games, about the mischief, about how they were united before the problems began. Was Sarah like me? Asked Emily. Very similar. She had the same curiosity, the same ability to see the good side of people, even when they didn't deserve it. And about John, my great-grandfather? I was young and prejudiced at the time, but he was an honest man. He worked hard, truly loved your sister. If I had known him better, maybe things would have been different. That night, Emily slept peacefully for the first time since she had arrived at Michael's house. There were no more lies between them, no more fears about being discovered or rejected. Michael, in turn, felt a peace he hadn't experienced in decades. He had found not just a great niece, but a reason to live that went beyond work and money. The next morning, Michael made an important decision. He called Claire Montgomery and requested a private meeting. Claire, I want to talk about the comments you made about Emily. Michael, you know I was just concerned about you. No, Claire, you were being prejudiced. Emily is my family, and anyone who works with me needs to respect her. But Michael, you have to admit the whole situation was suspicious. The only thing suspicious here is how supposedly educated people can have so much prejudice against a child. Emily is my great niece. I have all the documents that prove it, and she will continue to be part of my life. Claire was silent for a few moments. You've changed, Michael. Changed for the better. Emily showed me what really matters in life. That afternoon, Dr. Sanders made her last official visit to Michael's apartment. She had analyzed all the documents and been impressed with the positive change in Emily. Mr. Thompson, it's evident that the child is flourishing under your care. She has gained weight, is more communicative, and most importantly, feels safe and loved. And about the guardianship process? With all the documentation proving the kinship, I see no obstacles. You should receive definitive guardianship soon. After the social worker left, Emily ran to Michael with a drawing she had made during the conversation. Look, Uncle Michael, I drew our family. On the paper were two figures holding hands, a tall one representing Michael and a small one representing her. But in the corner of the drawing were other, more faded figures, Sarah, Anna, John, all connected by lines representing family ties. It's beautiful, Emily. You drew our whole family, even those who are no longer here. It's because they're also part of our story, right? Even if they're not here, they brought us to each other. The wisdom of that 10-year-old child deeply touched Michael. She had understood something that had taken him decades to understand, that family is a chain that connects past, present, and future, and that each link has its importance. That night, Michael looked out the window and saw the city lights turning on. 2 months ago, that view represented only the business world, material achievements. Now it represented all the possibilities for the future that he and Emily would build together. Uncle Michael, said Emily, appearing by his side, thank you for not giving up on me even when you discovered I had lied. Emily, true family is that. It's standing by each other, especially in difficult times. And you gave me the greatest gift I could receive. What gift? You taught me to love again. You taught me that life is much more than work and money. You gave me a reason to wake up smiling every day. Emily hugged Michael tightly. I love you too, Uncle Michael. You're the best family I could have asked for. As he hugged her, Michael thought of Sarah, how happy she would be to know that her granddaughter had found her way back home. He thought of Anna, who even in poverty had raised a daughter full of love and hope. He thought of John, who had loved Sarah enough to face rejection from an entire family. All of them had contributed to making that moment possible. All of them now lived in Emily's smile, in the birthmark that connected generations, in the love that had finally overcome pride and prejudice. The Thompson family was complete again, not by the return of what was lost, but by the construction of something new and better. Michael had learned that sometimes we lose people to find others, and that true love always finds a way to manifest itself, even through time and the most unlikely circumstances. That night, for the first time in 42 years, Michael Thompson felt truly at home. 6 months later, The lives of Michael and Emily had completely transformed. The Upper East Side apartment no longer seemed like the same cold, impersonal place as before. Colorful drawings decorated the refrigerator, toys were scattered around the living room, and the sound of laughter filled the rooms that previously knew only silence. Emily was enrolled at St. Clair School, a reputable private school. Initially, there were difficulties in adapting. She had deficiencies in English and mathematics, had never regularly attended a school, but her natural intelligence and determination made her progress rapidly. "Uncle Michael, look at my grade," she shouted one afternoon, running to show an English test with a grade of 9. "The teacher said my essay about family was the best in the class." Michael smiled, observing how she had changed. Her light brown hair was now always neat and shiny. Her clothes were appropriate and clean, but mainly, her eyes shone with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved and protected. "I'm very proud of you, little one. Your mother, Anna, would be radiant seeing how you're developing." The mention of her mother no longer brought only sadness to Emily. Michael had taught her that the people we love never really leave us, that they live in our memories and in the values they taught us. At the office, things had also changed. Michael had become a more humane man, more understanding with employees. Claire Montgomery had requested a transfer to the branch in Boston after realizing she could no longer influence Michael as before. "Mr. Thompson," said Patricia, his secretary, "Newsweek wants to do a story about your history with Emily. They say it's inspiring." "No, Patricia, our story is personal, not marketing. Emily is not a trophy to be displayed." That was another significant change in Michael. Before, he would have loved the positive publicity. Now, he protected Emily's privacy like a treasure. That Saturday afternoon, they went to visit Connie in Queens. Michael had become a constant presence in the life of the woman who had cared for Anna Smith, helping her financially and maintaining the connection with Emily's past. "How are you, Miss Connie?" asked Michael, embracing the woman he now considered part of the extended family. "Well, my son, better every day. And Emily, how is she doing in school?" "Very well. I'm learning English, math, science, and I've made several friends," Emily responded animatedly. During the visit, they went to the small cemetery where Anna Smith was buried. Michael had a dignified tombstone made, with always fresh flowers. Emily placed a drawing she had made at school next to the gravestone. "Mum, I brought Uncle Michael again. He's taking good care of me as you always wanted, and I'm studying hard as you always asked me to." Michael observed Emily talking to her mother and felt a deep emotion. That girl had lost so much but continued to be capable of loving, of trusting, of growing. "Uncle Michael," she said on the way back, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think if great-grandmother Sarah hadn't been expelled from home, we would have met anyway?" Michael thought carefully before answering. "You know, Emily, I believe some people are destined to meet, regardless of the circumstances. Maybe not in the same way, but I think our paths would have crossed somehow." "I think so too. Because we have the same mark, right? The family mark." Michael looked at his own right hand, where the irregular red mark stood out on his fair skin. Then he looked at Emily's hand, where the same mark connected them through generations. "This mark brought us luck, didn't it?" She continued. "It brought much more than luck, Emily. It brought us to each other." That night they went to dinner at an Italian restaurant that had become Emily's favorite. The waiter, who already knew them, always reserved a special table for them. "Mr. Michael, Miss Emily, good to see you again," said Giuseppe, the Italian owner of the restaurant. "Hi, Mr. Giuseppe. Can you bring my favorite pasta?" asked Emily, already familiar with the environment. While waiting for the food, Michael observed Emily interacting naturally with the people around them. She had learned to behave in different environments, but without losing her natural spontaneity and sweetness. "Uncle Michael, can I tell you a secret?" she whispered, leaning over the table. "Of course. Sometimes I dream about great-grandmother Sarah. She appears in my dreams and says she's happy because we found each other. Do you think it's really her?" Michael felt a shiver. "I think so. A little one. I think Sarah is at peace knowing that her family is united again." "And do you think she forgives great-grandfather for expelling her from home?" "I think so. True love always forgives, Emily. and Sarah loved our family even when she was hurt by it. After dinner, they walked through the illuminated streets of the city. Emily was no longer afraid of walking the streets of New York. Now they represented not a place of survival, but of possibilities. Uncle Michael, when I grow up, I want to help other children who are on the streets, like I was. That's a beautiful goal, Emily, and I'll help you with that. Really? Would you agree to make a project to help street children? Of course. We can create a foundation, offer education, shelter, opportunities. You can be the inspiration for other children. Emily's eyes sparkled. We can call it the Sarah Thompson Foundation, in honor of great-grandmother. Perfect. That way Sarah will continue uniting families and changing lives. When they got home, Emily ran to her room to get something. She returned with a sealed envelope. Uncle Michael, I wrote a letter for you. Only open it when I'm asleep, okay? After putting Emily to bed and telling a story about princesses and castles, Michael opened the letter. The handwriting was still irregular, but the words were profound. Dear Uncle Michael, I wanted to write to let you know how happy I am now. Before I met you, I thought I had no one in the world. I slept in the cold, woke up hungry, and nobody knew my name. Now I have a family, a home, a school, and most importantly, I have you. You taught me that I am important, that I deserve to be loved, that I can dream of a beautiful future. I know that sometimes I misbehave, that I'm still learning how to behave, but thank you for having patience with me. Thank you for not giving up when you discovered I had lied. Thank you for giving me a chance to be your family. I love you very much, and I promise I will study hard to make you proud. Your great niece who loves you, Emily Thompson. Tears ran down Michael's face. He carefully kept the letter in the drawer of the bedside table, along with the original photograph of Sarah that had united their lives. The next day was Sunday, and they had a special ritual, breakfast in bed, watching cartoons together. Michael prepared pancakes with honey, Emily's favorite dish. Uncle Michael, can I ask you a serious question, she said, licking the honey from her fingers. Always. Are you happy? I mean, were you happy before you met me? Michael stopped eating and looked at her. Emily, I thought I was happy. I had money, success, a comfortable life, but it wasn't real happiness. It was more like being busy enough not to think about what was missing. And what was missing? Love. Family. Someone to share the good things in life with. Someone to make me laugh, to make me feel that I mattered as a person, not just as a businessman. And now? Now I know what it's like to be truly happy. I wake up every day eager to see your smile, to hear your school stories, to discover what new thing you've learned. You gave me a purpose, Emily. Emily snuggled against Michael's chest. I'm also happier than I ever imagined I could be. That afternoon they received a special visit. Dr. Henry arrived with the final adoption papers. The temporary guardianship had become permanent, and now Emily was officially Emily Thompson. Congratulations, you two, said the lawyer. I rarely see a case that ends so beautifully. Thank you, Doctor. For everything, said Michael, shaking the hand of the man who had made everything legally possible. After the lawyer left, Michael and Emily sat on the living room sofa, looking at the documents that formalized what their hearts already knew. They were family. Uncle Michael, can I tell you one more secret? Whispered Emily. Always. I knew you were a good person from the first moment I saw you on the street. It wasn't just because of the mark on your hand. It was because of the way you looked at me when I approached you. You didn't look at me with disgust or fear like other people did. You looked at me as if I were a real person. You always were. A real person, Emily. A special, brave, intelligent person. You just needed someone who could see that. As the sun set over New York, tinting the sky orange and pink, Michael and Emily remained there, embracing on the sofa, watching the city light up below. It was a view that Michael had known for years, but now saw with completely different eyes. Uncle Michael, said Emily sleepily, thank you for teaching me that family isn't just who is born together, but who chooses to stay together. Thank you, little one, for choosing me as family. That night, when Emily was already sleeping peacefully in her room, Michael stood on the apartment balcony, looking at the stars. He thought about how life can change in unexpected ways, how a birthmark and a creased photograph can rewrite destinies. He thought of Sarah, his beloved sister, and imagined how happy she would be knowing that her granddaughter had found her, way back home. He thought of Anna Smith, who had raised such a special daughter even amid difficulties. He thought of John Smith, who had loved Sarah enough to face rejection from an entire family. All of them had contributed to that moment. All of them now lived in Emily's smile, in the sparkle of her eyes, in the love that filled that house. Michael smiled, feeling a deep peace. He had found not just a great niece, but a reason to live that went far beyond professional success. He had learned that true wealth is not in what we accumulate, but in what we share. And there, on that balcony, under the starry sky of New York, Michael Thompson knew that his life had finally found its true purpose: to be family to a girl who had reached him through a mark that connected generations, carrying in her small heart all the love that a family can offer. The red mark on their hands wasn't just a genetic coincidence. It was a symbol that love always finds a way, even when it seems impossible, even when years of separation and pain try to erase the ties that bind us. Emily and Michael had found each other not by chance, but by destiny. And together, they were writing a new story for the Thompson family, a story of love, forgiveness, and new beginnings. Dear listeners, we hope that Michael and Emily's story has deeply touched your hearts. This journey of family reunion shows us that true love always finds a way, even through the most unlikely circumstances. To continue experiencing stories that explore family ties and the strength of human bonds, we've prepared a special playlist with equally moving narratives. Find it here by clicking on the left side of the screen. If this story awakened emotions in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video. Every day we bring unique stories that